A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hi, Herman and Corin. So in a number of episodes, we have looked in depth. I mean, I say in depth, but I mean, we're looking in depth for us lay people, at least me and the other listeners. I'm sure it's scratching the surface of what ballistic missile experts know and understand about the different munitions. But we've looked at least at the different generations in the Iranian ballistic missile fleet. We've looked at things like what hypersonic actually means, if it's really a differentiator in terms of technology, which I think it's fair to say we concluded is quite misleading to say that it is, or rather that the Iranian claims about their own capabilities have to be taken with a pinch of salt and are a bit scientifically skewed, that the evasive maneuvering of the different variations, but more often actually the tactics employed that they've attempted with different saturation attempts are maybe the biggest explanation for why we do see that despite Israel and its allies having cobbled together the most advanced missile air defense system in the world. I say that with confidence because if we know that the multiple layers of missile defense we have in Israel between the two Arrow systems, David Sling, Iron Dome, and now the Iron Beam is the most advanced, if we layer in the additional capabilities that the US has deployed, we have right now in place the most advanced missile air defense system ever assembled in the world, operational here, which is pretty amazing. But it's also very noteworthy that despite that, we have seen missiles getting through and impacting and causing loss of life, destruction, and bringing Israel essentially to a halt. Today's been a very, very on-off day. We've had about 6, I would think, interceptions here, or waves of alerts in Jerusalem throughout the day, just sometimes pauses as short as 5 minutes between the waves. So very much ongoing. And I'd love to chat today about the other missile arsenals that Israel is threatened by. And I'm going to say that we should exclude Hamas from the conversation, and not that they don't have a missile capability and pose a threat, because they do. But strategically, I think that it's generally accepted that this is the least concerning because of the relatively crude nature of the missiles that they've used to date compared to what we're seeing from Iran. The two I'd like to focus on are Hezbollah's capability, which we've often heard about. They have this spectacular number of missiles targeted at Israel, and we've seen in the last day or two that they're joining in the war against the pleas of Israel, the US, and even the Lebanese government, who don't want to see their country dragged into yet another conflict. And the Houthis. The Houthis were for a while sending almost daily missiles here, usually a single one at a time, and didn't achieve -1 landing near Ben Gurion Airport. Reportedly, didn't achieve much success from their standpoint. But these two arsenals are very much part of the Iranian wall of fire that they've sought to put up around Israel. We saw reporting recently that the IRGC is literally on the ground in Lebanon directing their tactics, and the Houthis have had their capabilities sponsored by Iran. The question really, Herman and Corin, is that given that these are both kind of Iran-backed missile programs, how substantially do they differ from those of Iran themselves? And strategically, from Israel's standpoint, and from missile defenses generally, there's a really big difference between Lebanon, which we have a border with, and Iran, which is at its closest point about 1,200 kilometers from Israel. So the Lebanese, or Hezbollah, can launch missiles literally on Israel's door into the country. So I'd love to know from a purely strategic standpoint how these different arsenals compare in the different ways they threaten Israel and challenge our interception systems, and in sophistication and in terms of threat. How would you rank Iran, Hezbollah, and the Houthis? Crazy to think that three different entities do actually threaten Israel with missiles and employ them quite regularly to try to destroy the country. But so far haven't succeeded, thank God. Herman and Corn, over to you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my weird prompts. I am Corn Puppleberry, and I have to say, today has been a bit of a marathon. If you are listening from outside Israel, you might have heard the news, but for those of us here in Jerusalem, it has been one of those days where you spend half your time looking at the sky, and the other half looking for the nearest stairwell.
Herman Poppleberry here. And yeah, Corn, marathon is one way to put it. I think we have had about 6 waves of sirens today alone. You get that distinct sound of the Iron Dome or David's sling intercepting something overhead, that heavy thud that shakes the windows, and then you wait 5 minutes and try to go back to your coffee. It is a strange way to live, but it definitely makes today's topic feel a lot more immediate.
It really does. Our housemate Daniel sent us a voice note earlier, and given that we are all living through this together in the same house, his question felt especially pointed. He wanted to move beyond just talking about Iran's direct capabilities, which we have covered quite a bit recently, and look at the other players in this Iranian wall of fire. Specifically, he is asking about Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen.
That is a solid question, because while they all get their toys from the same factory in Tehran, the way they use them and the way they threaten Israel is fundamentally different. It is not just a matter of scale, it is a matter of geography, physics, and the specific strategic goals of each group.
Right. We often group them all together as Iranian proxies, which they are, but their arsenals are tailored for different roles. So today we are going to break down how Hezbollah and the Houthis differ from Iran itself, how they challenge Israel's multi-layered defense systems in unique ways, and then we will try to rank them in terms of sophistication and the actual level of threat they pose to the country.
And I think it is important to start with the sheer proximity factor. When we talk about Iran, as we did back in episode 918 when we discussed their solid fuel developments, we are talking about a distance of over 1,000 kilometers. That gives Israel a lot of time to react. But with Hezbollah, we are talking about a border that you can literally walk across.
Let's start there, with Hezbollah. Daniel mentioned that they have this spectacular number of missiles. The common figure cited is often around 150,000 rockets and missiles. Herman, when people hear that number, they usually think of 150,000 precision missiles, like the ones Iran showed off last year. But that is not quite the reality, is it?
Not at all. The vast majority of Hezbollah's arsenal consists of what we would call statistical weapons. These are unguided Katyusha-style rockets, many of them the 122mm variety. They are essentially metal tubes filled with explosives and a basic propellant. They have no guidance systems. You point them in a general direction, fire them in massive volleys, and hope they hit something.
But that is actually the point, right? The threat isn't that one of these is going to hit a specific building. It is that 50 of them are coming at once, and they are cheap.
That's the saturation strategy. If Hezbollah fires 100 unguided rockets at a northern town like Kiryat Shmona, the Iron Dome has to make a split-second decision. The system's radar tracks the trajectory, calculates where it will land, and if it is heading for an open field, it lets it go. But if it is heading for a residential block, it fires a Tamir interceptor. Now, each of those interceptors costs between $40,000 and $50,000, while the rocket it is hitting might cost $500. We actually did a deep dive into this financial lopsidedness in episode 744, the billion-dollar math of missile defense.
I remember that. It is a war of attrition. But Hezbollah has been moving beyond just those unguided tubes, hasn't it? There has been a lot of talk about their precision-guided munitions, or PGMs. How much has that changed the equation?
It changes it significantly. Over the last few years, with a lot of help from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hezbollah has been working on conversion kits, often referred to as the Labaik project. They take those old unguided rockets and add a GPS guidance fin to the nose. Suddenly, That statistical weapon becomes a precision tool that can target the Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv or an electrical power plant. This is why the Israeli Air Force has been so active in Syria for years, trying to interdict these shipments. Every precision missile Hezbollah gets is a one-to-one threat that the Iron Dome or David's Sling cannot afford to miss.
And the flight time is the real killer here. If a missile is launched from Lebanon toward Haifa, how much time does the defense system actually have to react?
We're talking about seconds to maybe a couple of minutes depending on the depth of the target. For the residents in the north, the warning time is often less than 15 seconds. From a technical standpoint, this puts an immense strain on the automated systems. There is no time for human intervention. The computer has to identify the launch, confirm the threat, and launch the interceptor almost instantaneously.
So if we compare that to the Houthis, who are thousands of kilometers away in Yemen, it is a completely different ballgame. Daniel noted that the Houthis were sending almost daily missiles for a while, but they didn't seem to have much success. Why is that? Is it just that their tech is worse, or is the distance the deciding factor?
It is a bit of both, but mostly the distance. The Houthis are using Iranian technology, specifically variants of the Qian ballistic missile and the Sumar cruise missiles. In episode 697, we talked about the nuclear truck and how Iran has miniaturized these systems to fit on mobile launchers. The Houthis have these, but because they are firing from Yemen, the missile has to travel over 2,000 kilometers to reach Eilat or central Israel.
That gives the aero systems a lot of time to track them, right?
That's right. When a Houthi ballistic missile like the Tufan is launched, it follows a high parabolic arc. It actually leaves the atmosphere for a portion of its flight. This is where the Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 systems come in. They can track that missile from the moment it clears the horizon. They have 15, 20, even 30 minutes to calculate the intercept point. Because the Houthis usually fire one or two at a time, rather than the massive saturation volleys Hezbollah uses, the defense systems can pick them off with almost 100% accuracy.
So the Houthis are essentially providing Israel with live fire target practice for the aero system.
In a way, yes. It has actually been a massive advertisement for Israeli defense tech. We saw the first ever combat interception in space because of a Houthi launch back in late 2023, but we shouldn't be too dismissive. The Houthis have been very creative with their drone and cruise missile combinations. Cruise missiles like the Quds series fly low, hugging the terrain to avoid radar. That is a different challenge than a ballistic missile. They tried to use these to bypass the radar coverage by coming in over the Red Sea.
That's a key point. It is not just about the missile itself, but the path it takes. If you are Hezbollah, you are coming over a land border with mountainous terrain. If you are the Houthis, you are coming over the sea, or through the airspace of neighboring countries like Saudi Arabia or Jordan.
Right, and that introduces a geopolitical layer. When the Houthis fire at Israel, those missiles often pass through airspaces where the United States Navy or even regional partners have assets. So the Houthis aren't just facing Israel's defense, they're facing a coalition. This is what we discussed in episode 766 about the axis of resistance being a multi-front strategy. Iran uses the Houthis to see how the coalition reacts, while they save Hezbollah for a more direct, high-intensity conflict.
So let's look at the sophistication of the hardware itself. If Iran is the source, how much of their top-shelf technology are they actually giving to these groups? We have seen Iran claim to have hypersonic missiles, like the Fatah, which we were a bit skeptical about in episode 717. Are the Houthis or Hezbollah getting anything close to that?
No. Iran keeps the truly cutting-edge stuff for itself, partly because of the risk of technology transfer if a missile is captured or fails to explode, and partly because they want to maintain their own strategic edge. What they give to the Houthis and Hezbollah are what I would call mature technologies. They are reliable, relatively simple to operate, and effective enough to cause damage.
Give me an example of what that looks like in practice.
Take the Zelzal 2. It is a heavy, unguided rocket that Iran has produced for decades. They gave thousands of them to Hezbollah. Then they developed the Fateh 110, which is essentially a Zelzal with a guidance system. That is now the backbone of Hezbollah's precision threat. It is solid-fueled, which means it can be stored for years and fired on very short notice. You don't have to spend 30 minutes fueling it on the launch pad while an Israeli drone watches you from above.
And the Houthis? What is their high end?
Their high end is the Tufan, which is basically a rebranded Iranian Ghadr missile. It has a range of about 2,000 kilometers. It is a liquid-fueled missile, which is a bit more cumbersome, but it carries a massive warhead. The fact that the Houthis can even operate a liquid-fueled medium-range ballistic missile in the middle of a desert is a testament to the level of training the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps has provided them. These aren't just guys in sandals anymore. They are operating a professional rocket force.
It is a sobering thought. When you look at the recent events, like that Houthi missile that reportedly landed near Ben Gurion Airport, even if it didn't cause major damage, the psychological impact is huge. It stops air traffic. It sends millions to shelters. That is a strategic victory for them, even without a direct hit.
You're right. And that leads us to the comparison Daniel asked for. How do we rank these three in terms of sophistication and threat level? Because those are two very different metrics.
Let's start with sophistication. If we are looking at the engineering, the guidance systems, and the ability to innovate, how do you see the hierarchy?
In terms of sophistication, Iran is obviously number one. They are the designers. They are the ones developing the solid fuel engines, the multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles, and the satellite guidance. They are the foundry.
And number two.
I would actually put the Houthis at number two for sophistication, which might surprise some people. But you have to look at what they are doing. They are launching long-range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles over thousands of kilometers. They are coordinating drone swarms with missile strikes. They have shown a level of technical proficiency in maintaining and launching these complex systems far from the Iranian heartland that is quite impressive. They are managing the physics of long-range flight, which is much harder than what Hezbollah does.
That leaves Hezbollah at number three for sophistication. That seems counterintuitive given how long they've been around and how much money they have.
Well, Hezbollah's strength isn't sophistication, it is scale and integration. Most of their arsenal is still very low tech. Their sophistication lies in their concealment and their tactical use of the terrain. They have built an entire underground city in southern Lebanon to hide these launchers. But the missiles themselves, for the most part, are simpler than what the Houthis are using to reach across the Middle East.
Okay, so that is sophistication. Now let's talk about the threat level to Israel. This is where I suspect the ranking flips.
It flips completely. If you ask any Israeli defense official who the number one threat is, they will say Hezbollah, hands down. It is the proximity. The sheer volume of their arsenal could theoretically overwhelm the Iron Dome. If they fire 3,000 rockets a day for a month, the math just doesn't work in favor of the defense. You run out of interceptors or the system just gets saturated and things start getting through. That is an existential threat to the Israeli economy and daily life.
I see that. It is the difference between a sniper a mile away and someone with a shotgun standing in your doorway. The sniper might have a more sophisticated weapon, but the guy with the shotgun is much harder to deal with.
That is a perfect analogy. So, Hezbollah is the number one threat level. I would put Iran at number two. Not because they are likely to launch a full-scale invasion, but because of the potential for a high-intensity escalation. If Iran decides to fire their most advanced missiles, like the Sejil or the Khaybar Shakan in coordination with their proxies, that is a nightmare scenario. Their missiles are faster, more accurate, and harder to intercept than anything the proxies have.
And that leaves the Houthis at number three for threat level.
Yes, but with a caveat. They are a persistent nuisance. They can't destroy Israel, but they can disrupt the shipping lanes in the Red Sea, which we have seen has a massive impact on the Israeli economy. They can force the Eilat port to close. So, while they aren't going to level Tel Aviv, they are a significant strategic drain.
It's remarkable how these roles are so clearly defined. Hezbollah is the immediate hammer, the Houthis are the distant harasser, and Iran is the ultimate deterrent in the background. It is a very effective piece of strategic architecture.
It really is. And it is all designed to do one thing, challenge the Israeli defense systems at every layer. The Iron Dome handles the short-range Hezbollah rockets. David's Sling handles the medium-range Hezbollah and Houthi cruise missiles. And the Arrow system handles the long-range ballistic threats from the Houthis and Iran. By attacking from all these different distances and with all these different technologies, they are trying to find a gap in that multi-layered shield.
You mentioned earlier that despite this being the most advanced defense system in the world, things still get through. We have seen it today here in Jerusalem. Why is that? Is it a technical failure, or is it just the reality of the math?
It is mostly the math. No system is 100% effective. If an interceptor has a 95% success rate and you fire 100 missiles, 5 are going to hit. And sometimes the system makes a choice. If a missile is falling in an area that was previously considered open space but now has a temporary military post or a new construction site, the computer might miscalculate the risk. There is also the issue of debris. Even a successful interception sends shards of hot metal screaming down at the ground. That can still kill people and cause fires.
That is something people often forget. The boom in the sky isn't the end of the story. It is just the beginning of the cleanup.
For sure. And the psychological toll of that constant boom is part of the strategy. It is about making the country unlivable. If you can't go to work, if your kids can't go to school because the sirens are going off every hour, the enemy is winning even if they aren't hitting their targets.
So, looking forward, where does this go? We have seen the Houthis getting more bold, Hezbollah is now fully engaged in the conflict, and Iran is watching closely. Do you see the technology level of the proxies increasing significantly in the next year?
I think we will see a massive push for more precision. That is the clear trend. Iran knows that unguided rockets are becoming less effective as Israeli interception tech improves. They want every rocket to count, so expect to see more GPS-guided kits, more small-diameter drones like the Shahed 136, and more attempts to use electronic warfare to jam the Israeli radars.
Electronic warfare is a perspective we haven't touched on much. Is there a threat to the actual guidance of the interceptors?
There is always a cat-and-mouse game with radar and jamming. If the enemy can blind the Iron Dome's radar for even 60 seconds during a volley, the results would be catastrophic. Israel is obviously aware of this and has some of the best electronic countermeasures in the world, but it is a constant battle.
It really feels like we are in a new era of warfare, where the front line is everywhere. It is in the basements in Lebanon, the mountains in Yemen, and the labs in Tehran, and we are sitting right in the middle of it.
We are. But I think it is also important to acknowledge the incredible resilience of the systems and the people here. The fact that we can have this conversation while 6 waves of missiles were launched at us today is a testament to how far defense technology has come. It is not a perfect shield, but it is a shield nonetheless.
Well, I think that gives a pretty comprehensive answer to Daniel's prompt. We have looked at the scale of Hezbollah, the distance of the Houthis, and the sophistication of Iran. We have ranked them by threat and by tech, and we have seen how they all work together to try and poke holes in Israel's defenses.
It is a complex picture, and it is one that is changing every day. If you are interested in the deeper mechanics of these specific missiles, I really recommend going back to those episodes we mentioned. Episode 918 on the solid fuel transition is particularly relevant right now as we see more of those missiles showing up in the region.
Definitely. And for those of you listening, if you have your own questions about the technology or the strategy behind what is happening in the world, please do reach out. You can find the contact form on our website, myweirdprompts.com. We love getting these prompts from Daniel, but we also love hearing from our listeners.
Definitely. And while you are there, you can check out our full archive. We have over 900 episodes now covering everything from the physics of missile defense to the geopolitics of the Middle East. It is all there at myweirdprompts.com.
And hey, if you have been enjoying the show and finding these deep dives helpful, we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a quick review on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It genuinely helps other people find the show and allows us to keep doing this.
It really does make a difference. Well, Corn, I think I hear the kettle. Let's hope the sirens stay quiet long enough for us to actually finish a cup of coffee this time.
I'll drink to that. Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. I'm Corn Poppleberry.
And I'm Herman Poppleberry. Stay safe out there, everyone. We will talk to you in the next one.
Until next time.
Take care.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from sloth